All right guys, in this video we're going to show you how to use a metal brake to make aluminum fascia or trim for your house. Stick around and we'll show you how it's done. All right guys, my name's Aaron. We're here in our shop and I've got a roll of trim coil like the kind that you're going to use to make fascia metal for your house or wrap a beam, or it's like a residential trim coil. And the length of this coil is 24 inches tall by 50 foot long. And this is kind of the standard. So if you guys are going to do some projects for yourself on your weekend, or if you're going to rent a brake, or maybe you have a brake, this is the standard material. So besides using the brake in this video, because the brake's pretty simple, you lock the metal in and you pull up on the handle and you bend it, I'm going to show you not just the brake, I'm going to show you my entire system. And I don't do a lot of residential work. The crew I run is primarily commercial, but when we do residential work, I thought I'd throw it on the video and show you because I like the setup that I have, and I love to show new employees this setup. So this video is going to be basically what I would do when I train a new guy, and I've got this system fairly standardized so that my idea would be to put a guy that didn't even know what a brake was, and in an hour or two he can do this in a repeatable manner that would allow him to get the same quality as a guy who's been doing it for 20 years. So that's kind of when I design a process, that's what I'm thinking, and that's what I'm going to show you today. So the first thing I want to show you is I've got a table, and I've got my table set up, and I'm going to take my trim coil, open it up, and I've got a tape measure and a framing square right here. And I've got a mark on my table already at 10 foot because a brake is like 10'6". So I'm going to line my coil up, and I'm going to roll out my coil out down my table. I've got a vice grip right here that's going to stop my roll, and I'm going to butt my roll up against that vice grip, and it's just going to sit there for me. Now I've got my table marked already like a jig. I'm going to put my coil flush with the side of this table, and I'm going to push it up to my backstop. And I don't have to get a tape measure out because I've already got a mark on my table where 10 foot is. So I'm going to use a framing square, and I'm basically going to line up where my 10 foot mark is, and I'm just going to run a utility knife right down the edge of this coil, just like that. You can score it once or twice, and then that coil is going to break. It'll break right in half. So I'll take this right here, I'll pick this up, put my hand under it, peel it up, lift it up a couple times, and it breaks right in half. So that's how I'm going to start off with my roll of trim coil. I'm not going to roll it out on the ground. I'm going to use it on the table. All right, guys, so what I just did, I took my trim coil in the full roll, and I basically just laid it on my table. I got a jig marked out, and I cut it, and I've cut all of my sizes. So I've got 5 pieces of trim coil, 10 foot long, and that's what's going to fit into my brake. So now my next task is to take all my blanks. I call these my blanks, and I've got them the right side up because we're going to have a black face on this, and I've got them, so I've got the color that I want facing down on all these pieces. My next job is to take a tape and mark out the size so I can make little check marks with my pencil of the size of the fascia that I'm going to make. Now this is an actual job that we're doing, so this is all something that's going to go onto a house that we're building. And the size that I need a 6-inch tall face, and I need a 1-inch L on the bottom, so I need a 1-inch piece that's going to sit like this, and then I'm going to put a 1-inch hem on the top of this piece. The hem, I'll show you, that actually adds a lot of stability and rigidity to your trim coil because this stuff's pretty thin, so the hem really helps. What it also does is if I have a 6-inch face with a 1-inch bend and then a 1-inch hem, now I'm at an 8-inch total blank, and I've already told you the trim coil was 24 inches tall, so I can get 3 blanks 8 inches wide out of a 24-inch wide coil, so even the math kind of works out. So we're going to go ahead and mark these up, and the way I'm going to mark this, I'm going to mark 1, 7, and 8, and I'll show you why I do that. And then while I'm marking this, I want to show you, I don't let guys hook right here close to them and mark 1 and 7 and 8. What we're going to do is we're going to mark on the back side of this, because when I pick this trim coil up, I'm going to pick it up, and I'm going to pick it up the same way that I'm going to put it into the brake. So I don't want to spin anything around. I don't want to do any movements that I don't have to do unnecessarily. So when I pick it up, I'm going to put this piece into the machine or into the brake, and I'm going to have the piece that I'm going to bend first inside. So when I cut this off, I lay the rest of my blank back on the table, and the piece that I'm going to work on is already into my metal brake, and so I have less movement. So resist the urge to measure your blanks from here. Go ahead and hook on the outside, the furthest part away from it, because that's how you're going to pick up the coil. So we'll go ahead and mark this out 1, 7, and 8. All right, so here's the piece we're gonna work on first. It's on top of the pile. And I told you we're gonna mark it 1, 7, and 8. So the 1 is gonna be a bend line, the 7 is gonna be a bend line, and the 8 is gonna be a cut line. So here's my 1, and I'm gonna make a pretty decent check so I can see it. Here's my 7, and here's my 8. So as you can see here, the whole thing's 24, as I said. So I'm gonna get 3 pieces equally out of 8, and it just turned out that on this particular job, this is what we need. If you needed more or less, you could adjust the size, and you mark whatever you need for your particular application. But for this, we need 1, 7, and 8, and that's kind of what our standard fascia is, and this is gonna work out good. So I'll go to the other side, and I'm gonna mark this piece out also, 1, 7, and 8. So I'm gonna get myself a 1, 7, and an 8. So now I've got my first piece of blank. I've got my first blank, and I marked it on that side. So now all I've got to do is I've got to pick this piece of coil up, and I'm going to pick this up in a way that just lets it roll like this. I'm not going to try to put it in a bind, because all those little dings you put on it, you'll see when you hang it. So I'm just going to pick this up and let it roll, and we'll walk it over to the metal brake. We'll slide it in, and we'll start working on it, start bending this piece up. All right, guys. So this is the brake. Just a tip, go ahead and open up your jaws so when you walk over here with your metal, it's already open. So I'm gonna pull my jaws open on the brake. And remember, we marked on that side, so all I've gotta do is pick up my coil, and the piece that I'm working on when I cut it is gonna stay in the brake, and that's what I want. I don't wanna handle anything any more than I have to. So that's how I put one side in, and then I roll it down. And now what I'm gonna do is close this up a little bit. And then basically all I'm gonna do is, I told you my 1 and my 7 were my bend lines, and my 8's my cut line. So I'm I need to get the rest of this excess material off of this piece, and I'm gonna go to my cut line. So I'm gonna tap this in and get to my 8. My piece is lined up on my check marks that I made at 8, so I'm just gonna close my brake up. And I'm gonna do the same procedure as I did over there to cut this coil, because just use a utility knife, it cuts real easy, and all I'm gonna do is run my knife down the edge of this brake. So I'm gonna do it once, and if my knife's real sharp, I might do it once. My knife's been dull, so I usually do it twice. And then I get a good clean brake. So once I've scored that piece of metal, I'm gonna lift up the brake. You can hear it breaking, and all I do is pull the top back, lay it back down. Now this blank goes right back onto my table, because this is not the piece I'm working on. The piece, remember, that I'm working on stayed inside my machine here. So I'm going to loosen up my jaws, and now all I'm going to do is pull out 1 inch, and I'm going to go to my 7 line. So here's my mark. Already got that side, and I got this side marked up. So there I am right there. Now this, as you always want to break metal as you pull it out, because you can't push, once metal's bent, you can't push it back in. So you start with the material, as a general rule, all the way into the brake, and as the metal or the aluminum comes out, that's when you add bends to the piece, whatever you're making, because you can't stick it back in once it's done. So we're going to start with our first bend here. This is going to be our hem. I always do my hem here. So I'm going to take this, and I'm going to go all the way up with it. But I'm not going to take the piece out and flatten my hem yet. I'm going to leave it just like this, because I don't want to double handle it. So I'm going to pull this out, and this part here is going to be my bottom L. This is the part that's going to cover my soffit. So I'm going to pull out to my line. This was the 1. Remember, we marked 1, 7, and 8. 1 was the bend line. 7 was the bend line, which was right there, and 8 was the cut line. So I'm going to put this on my mark. You can see my check, and close up. And on this piece, I'm going to go up to a 90, just past the 90, because there's a little bit of spring back on this material. So I'm going to have to go just past the 90. When it springs back, it'll sit at a 90. So here we go. I'm going to come up to a 90. I'm eyeballing it. I'm watching. I'm just past the 90. Bump it a little bit. Now my piece, I tend to bend my pieces at a 90 or just a touch over. So now I've got my 6-inch face like I wanted. I've got my 1-inch L that's going to cover my soffit, and I've got a nice hem, as you can see here. So the only thing left to do with this piece is to close this hem down, and my piece of fascia is done. So I'm going to loosen up my jaws, and to close this hem, I'm going to close my jaws back down, I'm not gonna rotate the piece or flip it or do anything weird to it. All I'm gonna do is turn it over, lay it right back onto into my track here so I can close this hem down. Take one hand, put a little pressure on it, and I'm gonna close this hem. And so right there with my brake, now I've closed that hem. Now when I'm done with this piece, I'm gonna take this piece just like this and set it on another table. So here's my finished piece of fascia. I've got 1 on the bottom, 6 on the face, and 1 on my hem. And what that hem is gonna do is just make sure that my fascia slides up underneath the drip edge without getting hung. It's a lot less likely to get hung on OSB, hanging off your fascia board or for your roof decking, any of that stuff. Catch a little nail, this rounded piece. And then that hem adds a lot of rigidity to that piece and makes it oil can just a lot less. So you can be a little bit rougher when you're handling your fascia if you've got a hem on it too. That's another when you guys are hanging it. So that's basically how you make trim coil, and it is that simple. And do your best, whatever piece you're making, to try not to flip and handle and double handle and triple handle your pieces. Try to figure out a good process to where you're cutting and handling the material, bending the material in a way that's the quickest and most efficient. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.